for the second time, thank you. If this is your first time here, welcome. We do have a couple of standing room, well, obviously some standing room seats. So unfortunately, we don't have chairs for everybody, but thank you for sticking around. Yeah, so Bundle is a Neighbors Together funded grant that comes from the V-Trans project for the rail and bridge construction. Bundle's mission is to get people into the empty spots downtown so that we see them as usable locations and find full-time leasers. So if you can imagine somebody in this space, again, put them in touch with me. I would love to talk to them about getting 51 Main permanently rented, and then we would just move on to the next location. I'm going to take a breath here for a second and invite our, tonight we have Women Safe who are joining us. And each time that we do one of these storytelling events, we're going to have a local organization highlighted that we feel that their efforts are about community-centered work. And so last time we had Hope, and we raised $200 in donations for them, plus 75 pounds of food. And so I would really like you to each, at some point, go over to the Women's Safe table and maybe consider making a donation, but meeting who the representatives are from Women's Safe. So I'm going to invite Carrie and Amy up to talk a little bit about Women's Safe.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you so much for putting this on. This is awesome. So I'm just going to start by quickly telling you what Women's Safe is, just in case you don't know. So Women's Safe is our local agency that works with folks across the gender spectrum to heal from domestic and sexual violence and prevent domestic and sexual violence. I'm so thrilled to tell you that our community came together and built transitional housing within the last year, and that's about to open. And if you know someone who's looking for transitional housing, we have a short waiting list, but we'd love to hear from them. And I want to give all of you a big, huge round of applause because our community actually manifested a building from the love that we have for each other.
Thank you, Carrie. It's incredible to be able to announce that we have raised nearly $1 million in the last few years. Our goal is 1.2, so if you feel like you have an extra couple $100,000, I need to follow you. But the final capstone kind of goal was to be able to open these 2 apartments, and I want to share with you that all of the money that you're able to put in the jar tonight will help us furnish these 2 really lovely, sweet apartments that will provide a safe and fresh start for people whose potentially love stories may not be as sweet as those we get to hear from tonight. So thank you all for hosting, thank you for being here, and thanks to Kelly and Lisa for thinking of us.
Jump back up here quickly and just give a little thing about how this works. It's a 5-minute story or less. And Judd Markowski, who is an accordion player, is going to give everybody a little air shuffle off if 5 minutes gets too long. So you'll hear that. Judd is very generous to come out and play the accordion tonight, so maybe we'll have some fun music in between. But I'm going to actually start with the first story tonight. So when Lisa and Matt and I were talking about love, really, I had a list of about 1,000 things I love, because I'm the kind of person that doesn't like anything. I love everything. And so for me, it was really hard. I said, well, this is the 20th anniversary of finding out that I had twins that were going to be arriving in 4 weeks. And so I didn't understand the capacity that my heart could swell to accept this other child into my life. But that, 20 years ago, that happened, and it was pretty amazing. But the story that I keep coming back to is actually about candy. I grew up in a town that they called Candyland because there are so many candy stores there that the kids basically, our nutritional content of being a little kid was probably candy. And ironically, I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, right next to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and also next to Lidditz, Pennsylvania. So Hershey, the chocolates, and Lidditz was that those little dots that were stuck to the paper that you sucked off, right? So when we moved away from Pennsylvania, we moved to Delaware. I was a youngster, but I would collect beetles from our neighbors' roses, and I would get paid in pennies. And those Japanese beetles started adding up, and I would take my pennies to the University of Delaware's student center that had a candy counter, and I would spend all of my pennies on candy. And then as I got a little bit older, I was about 12 or 13, we had a downtown very similar to this. We had a candy store, and my friend and I convinced the person with the candy store to let us hustle candy on the street. Well, there was no money made that day. So, and then as I got a little bit older, my grandfather took over running a Holiday Inn in Newark, Delaware. And all the kids in our neighborhood thought that was so cool. They would pile in our Ferrari station wagon in the summer, and we'd all go over and swim at the pool. But the highlight was one of those machines. It was 1976, 77. That was like a cigarette machine where you like pulled the slot and the cigarettes fell. Well, he had a machine like that for Chuckles. And we all lined up for Chuckles. Whether you're going to the pool or not, we were bringing Chuckles home for everybody. It was so awesome. So I get a little bit older, maybe in college, and I realized, you know what, I haven't really made a lot of money. I've worked at Burger King and bought a car. I worked at Super Fresh and paid for cigarettes. But then I was like, you know, this is pretty bad. I started shopping at a mobile gas station because I had a mobile gas station card. And my nutritional value is coming out of Oreos. So you'll see tonight there are lots of Oreos over there. Until I discovered Peeps. Oh, John is up here shaking his head. He knows where this is going. Because I even own a Peep shirt. So, the thing about the Peeps, once they entered my life, this is really funny. Once they entered my life, everybody knew that I was the person who liked Peeps. And so if you live in Weybridge, there is a little thing that happens at our house where we get peeped probably once a week. And it is like zucchini season to the rest of you, right? You lock your door when zucchini season happens. You make sure nobody else's zucchinis enter your car. Well, I have actually been sitting in my car eating Peeps when someone comes by and brings me more Peeps. It is true, right, Kimberly Wonderman? It's true. Uh-huh. So, anyway, the whole Peep thing, I think it's just the joy of them. It's the color, it's the shape, it's the excitement of flavor. But to me, it's really about like that awl. You stick it in your mouth, and it has so many textures, and so much like, what is this, right? And it takes me back to like those first memories of Chuckles with the sugar outside and it's different texture inside. You know, mint julep, smooth on the outside, taffy on the inside. But yeah, so Peeps. That's and love, really? Yes, love, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for getting us started. The first person up is going to be Sarah King. She's right here.
Y'all can hear me. Cool. All right. So instead of talking, I'm going to sing a song about love. Many of you may have seen the story about my husband in the woods and stuff like that. This song isn't about him. Like crimson night, let me see your face. Can't believe I'm in this place with you. I should clarify, I wrote this before he and I met. Only Even through the darkness when I couldn't see, but here I am with you. You know I wonder, and I've been around the world searching for what's unheard. When you reach for me, somehow I understand. I'll always have a place to land with you. And in this moment, I swear I found the love that was meant for me. I kept on hoping, even through the darkness when I couldn't see, but here I am with you.
Thank you, Sarah. The next person up will be Doug Engel, and he told an amazing story last time. I don't know if anybody was here to hear it. Yeah, all right. Looking for another good one this time. No, I think yeah, oh, it's right to Nice.
Sorry, smaller.
Hi folks. Isn't Bundle amazing? I mean, Lisa and Kelly done an amazing job with this story. Okay, so I may be a little inappropriate. So I think that every time I'm inappropriate, I think we should give $25 to Women's Safe, right? So if I suck, we all do well tonight, right? So, right, yeah. So last time I spoke with you guys, I talked about my wife that had died a couple of years ago. And it's probably no surprise to many of you, and it's a little confusing to me, but she's still dead. Right? That's supposed to be funny. So, I talk with her, but I still talk with her, right? And I said, Bundle's doing this thing about love, and what do I love? And I really went through something I love about Middlebury. So what do I love about Middlebury? And Barb says, well, you love that woman that, like shakes her hand over at Mary Hogan in the morning, right? So that's a long story. And so what's next? So she said, well, you love those horse-drawn garbage service. Like, what's that about? I said, I don't know much about that, but what's next? She goes, well, I think you love that 22-year-old college student at the bakery. And I said, well, you're not really supposed to know about that. And she said, don't worry about it. You're 65 and 20 pounds overweight, and you don't tip. So there's nothing going to happen there. So she said, well, why don't you talk about the co-op? This is a true story, actually. We were coming through from Dorset up to Burlington looking for a house. We stopped at the co-op, and that was it. We decided to move here. So let me tell you a story about the co-op, right? So the co-op is the only place you can go for a 99-cent muffin and like come out with like $320 worth of llama cheese. That's male llama cheese, right? Only place in the world there's male llama cheese. It's true. The sauerkraut in Hannaford's is like $2. The sauerkraut at the co-op is $20. So wait. So on unless that's being fermented in Dalai Lama's tuchus, I don't think it's worth 20 bucks. It's probably actually worth 25 bucks if it's a Dalai Lama's tuchus. Does everyone know what a tuchus is? It's kind of Yiddish. Okay. So I needed to get carrots. Now, the vegetables at the co-op are special. They're so special they have names, right? The carrots I name Arnold. They're big, they're brawny. I actually am a little scared of the carrots. You know, I walk by, I take like a little step back. I actually think the carrots go to Vermont Sun and work out at night. And they come back the next morning. Like, so I'm online. This is actually somewhat of a true story. So I'm online and I have my carrots, I have my llama cheese, my male llama cheese, I have my sauerkraut, right? And I have my my muffin. And I'm online, and there's a guy in front of me, right? And he has this basket. It's not a lot in the basket. It's like the toothpaste with fairy dust, infused with fairy dust, all the things that the co-op sells. And these almonds you only have to eat in between yoga poses. And then, underneath all that, there are 25 spice packets. How many spice packets? 25. Right. Do they have numbers on them? No, they have like little symbols and a P for parsley, and the guy is smelling it, and he's going like back and forth, and I'm on fire, right? Like I'm on fire. And my dog's in the vet. It's like 4:45. I have to pick up my dog. And since my wife's died, I sort of sleep with, and every once in a while I play a little footsie with my dog, right? So I'm dying. I need to get back to the vet to pick up my dog, and this guy is taking his time. And I'm thinking to myself, I see the suggestion box, and I say, there should be like an IQ test for the spice. Are there any co-op volunteers here? Raise your hand if you're co-op. No, seriously, I know there are, because I've seen. Anyway, I think someone should sit in front of the spice aisle and have a little IQ test, like, how many planets are there? And if they say less than 2 or over 1,000, they should go to Shaw's for their spices, right? So it's like my aura is doing things with Arnold. I have this carrot Arnold, doing things with this carrot that like the nuns of the convent told me never to do. And she asks him if he's a member. What does he say? And so I figure what's happened is these guys were down at the Manchester Center, like the outlet malls, and the bus driver goes, okay, everyone, you've had your LL Bean slippers, let's go up to the Middlebury Co-op spice aisle. Like, sort of an amateur. And it's okay. So I get up to the cashier, and I go, can you believe it? Can you believe that guy? All those spices? And she goes, it was fine. And there's been lots of times I've been into that co-op with tears in my eyes over the past couple of years. And the thing I love about the Middlebury Co-op is when I walk in, I am surrounded by angels. Right. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. That was another great story. Totally different than your last one. Great things to laugh at there. And I too love the co-op, so I was right at home with that story. The next storytellers are right in front of us here, Victor and Betty DeNuovo. And you all probably recognize their names from the newspaper for many, many years of being in the Vermont legislature and all that.
We need an elevator. Okay, so I guess there are two questions we thought that people that might ask. How did we get together, and why did we stay together? Now, we met 68 years ago. We've been married for 66 and a half years. So it all started when my my sister became engaged to Betty's brother. And we were, they had a wedding, or they got married, and we were in the wedding party, and...
I was a bridesmaid, and he was an usher.
Right. So the wedding was over, the reception was over, and I was driving my parents home, but for some reason or other, you were sitting in the front seat with me. So I was holding the steering wheel, and all of a sudden, and I was hooked. So that's how we got together. And, in any case.
My fault.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I've always asked her, why did you do that?
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, she did. This is very true, and I must tell you, I can still feel it. I mean, it's okay. Now, the other question is why we stayed together so long. And so...
One of the reasons is he lets me do things that I want to do. Like I wanted to go into the legislature. Like I wanted to do other things.
You wanted to study law, too.
And when I wanted to study law, it took a lot of work because I had to do it myself. I didn't go to school. I had to read the books and do the books, and that meant night work. And then I had to pass the bar exam like everybody else who went to college, and I did. So I came.
When she went to the legislature, she introduced the first hate crimes bill in the state. And she also introduced the Equal Rights Amendment. Yeah, there's a lot more, but at any rate.
And we like to hold hands.
Yes.
We hold hands
Yes.
all the time. Not when washing the dishes, but
I guess I could end one thing. I mean, we do like to be together, and my favorite time of day is at night when we go to bed. Now, I'm not talking about, you said, I think it's all about sex. You realize how old we are. That's beyond us. But it's just that sense of being together that, I don't know if you remember the play, The Four Poster, which Jessica Tandy and Hugh Cronin did years and years ago. There is a sense of togetherness that we're not two people, we're really one, and that's what keeps it going. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. They've been married for a very long time, but that was a very short one. You were about 2 minutes under, so welcome. Maybe that's another thing that's kept you guys going. Gretchen, you want to come on up? Our next person up here is Gretchen Ayer.
Thank you. Two apologies. I'm going to be reading this because I've never told this story before, so you're the first ones. And also, Judd, this is longer than 5 minutes, so please don't kick me off.
Okay.
You get their extra jet. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to have to put my glasses on. So, where are you, Aaron Beckert? I first saw you on New Year's Eve, 1993 at 4 in the morning in an expat bar in Quito, Ecuador. I think it was called Papillon. And we had started our evening there, so we figured we'd end it there too. My sister Allison and I had been traveling in Ecuador for a couple of weeks, and we were there with Augustine, who we'd met on the beach at Alondalus the week before. We'd also met Aldo on the beach, and he invited us all to party at his nightclub in Quito, so of course we said yes. We'd been roaming around the city, watching the viejos burn and explode and dancing in the streets, and then I saw you. And this was 1993, remember? So I looked across the bar, and you had long blonde hair, and you were tall, and you had a flannel on, and I said to Allison, he's from the Pacific Northwest. And so I went over to talk to you and asked where you were from, and sure enough, you were from Olympia, Washington. And we started dancing, and then New York came on, and this was the last song the bar always plays before they close down. And I didn't know it at the time, but we were dancing, and I said, dip me, and you thought I said, kiss me. And so you did. So you came back to our apartment with us, and I still have the picture of the four of us the next morning, a little ragged. And this is what I learned about you that night. Your goal is to visit 100 countries before you're 30. Your parents were Peace Corps veterans, and you traveled a lot when you were a kid with them. You know a lot about Central American politics. You went to Evergreen College, but you didn't know my friends who went there, who snowboarded and dropped out. You started a tie-dye business in high school, and it's successful enough that you have employees, and you own your own house, and you travel whenever you can. You also told me that you had a vasectomy, not because you didn't plan on having kids, you do, but because you didn't want to have one accidentally when you were traveling. So I thought you sounded a little bit like a player, so that didn't happen. The next day, Allison and Augustine and I flew over the Andes to Augustine's place in Guayaquil, and we made plans to meet up with you in a few days. And there was no cell phones or email or anything, so we must have just agreed where to meet and when. Augustine was beautiful and twitchy, and his grandfather had been president of Ecuador, that's what he told us. And he had some sort of bureaucratic job, and he'd gone to grad school in LA, and he partied with Michael Hutchins from INXS. And he toured us around Guayaquil in his mini pickup truck, and he was all amped up and driving like a madman, and we got pulled over by a policeman, and he leaned over and he screamed, "You pulled us over because I'm blonde and you think I'm a foreigner and you can get bribe money from us, and do you know who I am?" And his apartment was scary, and it looked like he never ate or slept. So when we saw you at the train station at the base of the Andes a few days later, I was really happy and relieved in all kinds of ways. We rode on the top of that train, on the roof of the boxcars, on that very slow train for 12 hours up into the Andes, looking down into valleys that were thousands of feet deep, and arrived at a small town that was over 14,000 feet high. And the conductors stood on the top of the train, and they had little plastic bags on top of their hats, and they stood there looking at us with their backs to the forward motion of the train. When the train went through these tunnels, they just stood there and they'd smile at us, and it was really close. I'll never forget that. My mom has a picture of the three of us sitting on top of that train in her office on her wall. It was sunny and misty and beautiful, and you told us about the eucalyptus trees that were everywhere on the slopes of the Andes and how they were an invasive species and a problem that no one knew how to solve. We passed through all these tiny villages and stopped and bought plates of food, and it was one of my favorite days. You stayed with us that night and traveled with us the next day to Cuenca, where you split off, and we met up with some British kids that we had met on the beach too, and we had slept with them for free in hammocks because there were no rooms left at the Rendezvous. And you said you'd try to meet us in Quito before I left, and because by then it was only me leaving. Somewhere on that train, you had convinced my sister to take a semester off of school and stay in Ecuador. So I should have stayed too, but that's another story. And you told us to stay at the Magic Bean, which was run by some American kids in Quito that were our age, because they had real coffee there, not the Esencia Nescafe we'd be drinking for weeks. But I didn't really think I'd see you again. But Alice and I had a couple more weeks in the mountains and the jungle, and then the day before we were heading back to Quito, we ate at a vegetarian restaurant run by Swedish people, and I got violently ill after eating street food for 5 weeks. So I had to threaten the bus driver on the way back to Quito to pull over. By the time we got there, I was in really bad shape. And when we got to the Magic Bean and went up to our room, I was a little freaked out because someone had been in there already, and there were rose petals all over the floor. And I just laid down anyway because I just felt so bad, and then you walked in. And we had all planned to go out that night and celebrate the end of our time in Ecuador. But you just took one look at me and went out and bought Pedialyte, which I'd never heard of, but I still use when I need it. And you came back and you helped Allison and I pack our stuff because I had to bring her backpack back with me because she borrowed it for the trip. And you and Augustine and Allison went out that night, and Augustine had come to see us off as well, and he was acting weird and you made him leave. And then when he came back at 2 in the morning and was yelling outside the hotel room, Edison, Edison, why won't you talk to me? You made him leave. So, and the next morning, you insisted that you come to the airport with me, and I said, no, you really don't have to. And you said, you've got to carry your sister's stuff too, and I'm coming, and it's going to be a madhouse. And I don't really remember the airport other than you pushing through the crowds in front of me, and that it was a madhouse, and that you were speaking with the authority that comes with fluency and being tall. And we said goodbye, and I don't even remember if we kissed. But we must have exchanged addresses, because I did receive letters from you intermittently and postcards. And I must have written back, because 4 years later, you drove across the country from Washington to Vermont and visited me at my apartment in Burlington. You were coming to New Hampshire for a motorcycle rally. And you spent a few nights at my apartment, and I was engaged or almost engaged by then, and maybe you were too, I don't really remember. But I do remember looking at the photos you brought me of your house in Olympia, Washington, on the sides of this beautiful river, and at the pictures of it after the flood. And you said you were planning to rebuild, but maybe not in that same spot. And you still had your business, but your family was running it now, and you're mostly buying properties and renting it, and you still traveled a lot. And you hadn't made it to 100 countries yet, but you had 2 years left, and you were pretty sure you were going to make it. And I don't remember exactly what we did when you visited, other than we roamed around and talked to people and drank lots of coffee. And you told me that my coffee pot, which was kind of brown, was probably affecting the taste of the coffee. And the day that you left, I came home from the lab, and there was a note from you on the counter. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was sweet. And it said, "Thank you. Thank you. Good luck with everything. It was great to see you." And it was right next to the perfectly clean coffee pot.
Okay, we have another performer up here, or coming up, Davy Joy Holtzimer. I think she's walking around the back of the room now.
By the way, can I just clarify, we're not in that church yet.
So were the dinosaur bones, were those in fact a test, or do you now, were those ever actually
This
just...
is what brought us over to you.
Oh, okay.
Stone it is midnight, colorless
Nice work. That sounds wonderful. If anybody's ever tried to perform live and you have one of those moments when you have to start over, it's one of the most nerve-wracking things you can do. You know, you're suddenly on the spot and you better get it right the second time, and you did. Nice work. Next. There she is. Super.
Lovely Japanese pose. I'm so sorry. Good way to get things started, you know, making friends. So there's two things when you're in your 20s that you have a tendency to get asked about at Christmases. Have you found a job? And have you found your person? Now, at 23, I had managed to do both, and I was feeling incredibly smug. I had a job at a school I had wanted to teach at since I had visited there in undergrad, and I had a partner that I had been with at that point for years. Unfortunately, 5 years in, I had this realization that we were going in different directions. And I was sick about it. I was also sick in general because I had made some interesting life choices, and after graduating with a degree in literary studies, had undertaken the job of supervising an entire middle school math department. Interesting idea, sapped me of some of my energy and patience, and you wake up in the morning, you have a good cry, and then you go in and continue doing a great job. So, I had a dilemma, and I had to face that dilemma. And so here I was with these two things that I loved, this job that I loved, this person that I loved, and this poignant choice. And so, within about a month, I had resigned from that job, and I had ended my relationship. And it was one of those fascinating moments when a few things happen. Whenever I make one of these big life choices, two things happen. Thing one, I have a tendency to get this weird fake indigestion, and it's a really big problem because I love food, right? So it's like, I really like dinner, but I'm super nervous. Kind of like right now. And then this other thing happens, which is I get my own personal Vermont summer. Things just get very humid, which is why I'm wearing short sleeves. And these things were happening. So before I made both of these decisions, I sweat and I cried. It's amazing how many kinds of saline your body will produce under pressure. But what I've come to realize is that for me, sweaty pits signify true north. I know I'm doing something right when I'm doing the hard, scary thing. And what I realized after making those decisions was that you can think that you want something for so long. And that can change, and that's okay. And you can make a decision that is so scary, and it can turn out fine. After making these decisions, I still see some of my students, and I love them. They come up and say hi, they hug me. I just emailed about some music recommendations with one of these lovely kids, and I was like, oh, I can still show my face here. This community still is full of love. It's still home. And every few weeks, I get to talk with this wonderful man who I was with for so long. And there are two moments in every conversation. That moment where I remember we're laughing, and I remember, oh my gosh, this is why I love him. And that second moment where I remember why I still made the right choice. And so, out of all of this, I guess there's a few lessons, of course. And that is that love is very stubborn. You can change so many things. You can take love, crumple it up, just throw it off a cliff, it'll shatter, recongeal, and come walking back after you like it's some kind of oxytocin-fueled zombie. And so, I have a few wishes to leave us with. Wish number one is that we all of you lovely people, because I can tell, have the wisdom to know the love we need, have the courage to seek it out, and have the peace of mind of knowing that no matter what we do, whether we like it or not, the love zombies will find you.
Thank you very, very much. That was terrific. I didn't know where you're going with sweaty pits, but I know that feeling. I met this guy earlier, Ken. Where are you, Ken? Ah, there you are. Ken came in a little bit early and I had a chance to meet him and that was fun. And now we're going to hear his story.
First thing I want to say is that this is why I love Middlebury. You're very supportive and just very much love this town. My story is a little bit different, but it's got some levity, so it's not all that downer. So if we remember the movie Love Story, I have to use my notes, I'm sorry. Love Story is a film that came out in 1970, 50 years ago. I was 12. And so it's about Alan McGraw and Ryan O'Neal fall in love on campus, and they get married. And life comes crashing down when Jenny becomes terminally ill, and she's in the hospital dying. But as she lies dying, she says the iconic sentence, love means never having to say you're sorry. You don't remember that. So I can imagine Oliver telling his suffering bride, Jen, I'm so sorry that you're dying. Oh, never mind. Is that love really? No, I don't think so. So to me though, love is being love. It is not being in love. It is not falling in love. It's not being loved. But I'll come back to that in a few minutes. What I want to do is share with you what I think being love is. Being love is learning to really honestly and radically accept who and what I am. Because I'm not sure you can love someone if you're not loving yourself. So love is accepting myself as I am, forgiving myself and others, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So I accept my little faults, like going into the kitchen for the millionth time looking for something, what was it again? And then realizing that what I was looking for was right here. I used to hate that. But then I had to turn that thinking around because after all, that's who I am. That's part of who I am. I'm forgetful, and it's kind of being human. Damn it. So I'm realizing that love is a way of feeling alive for me. Being loved means, as I love myself, I simply love people. I accept them unconditionally, no judgment, without cynicism, no wondering about gender, without bias or hidden agendas. Now the last thing, hidden agendas, to me is very important. Because how often do we meet people and we treat them as if they're coming for a job interview and we're the boss, and we stand there and we kind of like give them the first impression look over, you know what I mean? Like long hair, dyed, purple. That's not a shirt I would wear. Sneakers, really? Okay, so no meaningful interactions today. I'm not gonna have them. Okay, that boss scenario I just described, I believe that's our learned or perceived behaviors rising to the surface. And where does that come from? I think it comes from our past. The past can seriously impede our future present. For me, a lot of my past is not pleasant at all. These traumatic events happen in my life. They're not very pleasant, but I have learned that I have to acknowledge the past. It happened. You can't deny that. But if I realize that there's not a damn thing I can do about it, it's called radical acceptance. It's when you go to the truth, when you decide, okay, what happened, happened. But it doesn't have to be the person I am. So when I look over my shoulder, I don't see my past desperately trying to catch up with me. And that's a really good feeling. Being loved asks me to be present, right here, right now, for me and for you. Oh, I went to the post office today and held the door open for an elderly person. And I just held it, I was taking my time, and she was coming up the steps slowly. And when she got there, she saw the open door, and she said, "Really? Is that for me? Thank you." It's like, okay. So, it's a simple gesture. It's a simple act of love. Being loved is not complicated at all. Okay, so let me get back to the idea of falling in love, being the state of being head over heels in love, smitten and bitten by love, weak in the knees in love, can't breathe in love, dizzy in love. Is it just me or am I describing a panic attack? So, not yet having had the experience to be in love or to fall in love doesn't mean I'm disillusioned with love. Far from it. Why? Because being loved, loving someone, follows the same recipe as being loved. No bias, no agendas, caring, compassionate, and no hidden agendas. And remember, we're not hiring with those agendas. So, if by some unexpected experience my love brings on the above symptoms of panic, I will welcome it willingly. And if I do fall in love, I'll just be excited to see where I land. Thank you.
Okay, Mary, are you here? This is Mary's second time to tell the story here as well. It's great to have her back.
You okay?
You want to sit or stand? Chair.
Hold on. So love has always been a household word in my family. It was a daily expression between all of my family members. On our wall hung a needlepoint plaque that said, "Always us, living love." As a child, I was utterly content in that safety, in that joy. Being a teenager, I grew impatient hearing my dad say for the 10th time that day, "I love you," only to now wish I could hear that again, and seeing that I do the same thing to my daughter. My big sisters did their best to impart their wisdom with love to save me trouble as an emerging adult, and sadly, I barely listened to them. And not until I became a mother myself did I truly understand the depth of my mama's unconditional love. For love in my family was also one of the most important subjects to study, according to my parents, much more so than math and science. Of course, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, the mecca of free love in the 60s and 70s. Berkeley, California, I was there. So consequently, romantic love drove my parents in both theory and deed. So, my love story started first when I was 3 years old and the neighborhood kids decided to marry two of us young kids together. I was 3, he was 7. I actually ended up at his real wedding and went up to his wife, who was actually from Japan, he wasn't, and said, "You know, he was married before." And the wedding almost stopped. Oops, sorry. I had my first crush as a 10-year-old or whatever, who I still wish I would have married to this day. He's such a great guy. I had my first love, who was fabulous and wonderful in a fun teenagehood, who consequently ended up marrying a woman with the exact same birthday and looked and talked just like me. So we're still friends today. There was a traveling love, as the one who had flower and rose petals in her hotel room. That happened to me. And then there was what I thought was going to be my first marriage, where I saw a man across a crowded room. And I boldly strode over and said, "Hi, my name's Mary. You look like the kind of man I'm going to marry someday." His friend said, "Uh-oh." We got together, had a wedding planned, but thankfully it didn't happen. He wasn't the right one. And then there was the long-distance relationship of me in California, him in Albany, New York, that I dropped everything I had built, my business, my home, my community, to go be with. And as a result, my wonderful daughter was born. As I was 42, at the very tail end. So that marriage didn't work out either. But that's okay, I got the best gift ever. So true love continues to elude me even at age 52. At this point, I'm simply aiming for a good partnership. Even so, through each of my years, a constant remains. Real love is what comes through upon my every waking day. Grateful and blessed. It is infused into every meal I make for family and friends. Love is present with each job I do, whether it be caretaking, bookkeeping, cleaning toilets, whatever it may be. It is the smile I exchange with my community members on the street or at the co-op. It is compassion each time my daughter insists we give our restaurant leftovers to the homeless person outside. Love is what directs my right actions. And there's a few of you in this room who might know that is absolutely my signature spark I offer with each professional massage I give. The experience of total support and unconditional love. Love happens to be my gift to the world. So believe me, I also have my moments of not living in love, those moments of total impatience with said daughter, anger at our world leaders for choosing a world with greed and violence, frustration at the dishonesty of some people, even the recoiling from those that appear so different that it scares me. But most destructive is the negativity I direct towards myself when I don't measure up to preconceived standards, or those times when I take 2 steps back instead of 1 step forward. And as such, for this year, I proclaim self-love as my theme for 2020. For in it, I trust I can continue with grace and strength to serve this world in the way I know best, with love as my intention.
Thank you very much, Mary. Everyone is doing an amazing job telling amazing stories and staying very, very close to the time or under, so we're cruising right along. We have 2 more folks coming up. Liana Merrill. There we go.
Everybody. Now I know I was meant to go after Mary because I can tell you she's an amazing masseuse. So my story tonight is about 2 dates with very similar details but with very different endings. So something I hate admitting, but you can tell just by looking at me, is that I'm a millennial. And as a millennial who was searching for love and started dating right after college, right as online dating was really taking off, I've been on a lot of first dates. But as some of you may know, first dates are usually not a whole lot to write home about, right? Usually both parties are really nervous and you're just kind of looking to get through it and either move on to the second date or say sayonara. So I have this theory that it's somewhere from like the 3rd date to the 5th date where both parties are kind of relaxed and you can really tell if there's a mutual spark. So fast forward to date number 3 with this guy that I'm really excited about, but I'm having a hard time gauging whether, he feels the spark. So, our first couple dates, we had great conversation and we had a lot in common, but he's shy, right? And I've convinced myself that as a wild extrovert, I'm destined to be with a shy introvert, just like my parents. And so I take it upon myself to, put my best foot forward and plan a romantic date and show him my true feelings. So since we both love, the outdoors and hiking, I've decided that we'll go to this, at the time, one of my favorite small hikes, and the best part was that it ended, with this beautiful view of Burlington and the Adirondacks, kind of like a surprise ending. Perfect with a little bench for sitting and watching the view. And the best part is I've brought a backpack and I've packed, we both love craft beer, and I've packed these 2 beers and a little cold pack so they stay cold, and I can't wait to bring them out. All right, so as we're talking and walking, I'm getting really excited. I'm thinking about, how awesome my plan was, and how we're gonna get there. We're gonna sit on the bench and look out over the sunset. Did I mention that I planned it so we'd be there right at sunset? And then I'd take out the beers and maybe we'd have our first kiss, right? So we get there and I'm all excited, and it's perfect, it's great weather. And I suggest that we sit down and take in the view. And he says, sure. And to my bewilderment, he sits literally as far away from me as possible on the bench. So I'm like, okay, well, he's shy. I'm gonna try not to get too discouraged. I've still got my big surprise. So I tell him I have a surprise, and I reach in and I pull out the cold beers, and I've even got koozies so our hands don't get too cold. I'm all excited, and his response is, cool. So at this point, I'm just totally deflated, and clearly we don't speak the same love language. And to make matters worse, right at sunset, so we had to scramble back to our cars in the pitch black because I didn't think to bring a headlamp or anything. And we didn't go on another date. So fast forward several more months, years maybe, and to my 5th date with a new guy that I'm equally excited about, but equally unsure of where we stand. And given my aforementioned pathetic story, I'm a little bit gun shy about, putting myself out there. So luckily he has planned this date, and he tells me that, we're going on a hike, and it's kind of a lesser known hike, and we have to kind of search for the trailhead, so it's exciting to me. And even though this hike was short, it was up like the whole way. So I just remember he's from Philadelphia, and he has a Philadelphia Philly P baseball team tattoo on his leg, on his calf, and I was behind him, so I was just focusing on that tattoo, trying to keep my breath from huffing and puffing. And anyway, so we get to the top, and it's, again, beautiful. There's a beautiful view looking out over Lake Dunmore and Silver Lake, and he asks if we want to sit down. I said, sure. So we sit down on the rock, and sure enough, he sits right shoulder to shoulder. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a good sign. And then we talk a little more, and then he says he has a surprise. And from his backpack, he pulls out wine glasses, cheese, crackers, pate. Please know way better than my previous efforts. And my heart skipped a beat because I learned in that moment, in that day, that you should always trust yourself and go for it and put your heart on the line, because you never know what's going to happen, and 3 years later, that same guy might ask you to spend the rest of your life with him with an equally well-planned surprise.
Did you know that was the story she was going to tell? Okay, another performer, Finn. And I only have Finn as a first name. Okay, here he comes. And then there is somebody who will be going after Finn. Somebody who walked in and is bold enough to come up and tell a story just right off the street. So after Finn, we'll have one more story, and then we'll go from there.
Smiles and laughs only feel close when we're playing our best.
high caliber stuff here today. Now, I think it was Sarah, is the name? Sue. Oh, it's Sue over there. Everybody, does anybody know Sue? I don't know.
Is Gretchen still here? Okay, so I'm going to take some responsibility for Gretchen's great story because I was her Spanish teacher in high school and her sister Allison. Spanish teacher. Okay, so as a Spanish teacher, one of my signature things was to tell stories about my travels. And I told so many stories. I don't know if anyone even knows any of them because I told them in Spanish, so they don't think, you know? And I was always tempted to tell some of the really good stories, but I always had to, you know. And I'm never going back there to teach again. So tonight I'm going to tell one of the stories that I never told. So it's not really about love, it's more about sex. But I often, historically got those things mixed up. So that's for another time. But anyhow, so I was around 20 years old and it was like 1975. And I went with one of my professors from college and his wife and their 2 little kids, and I was their au pair. And we were in Brazil. And we were living in Sao Paulo, and we traveled, we went everywhere, we went in the Amazon, and we went to Rio. And the time was coming to an end because it was August, it was winter, but I needed to go to Spain because I had signed up to go to university there the following year. So I asked them, and it was time for me to leave, and I said, I'm going to fly to Rio and fly to New York from Rio, because I really feel like I need to be in Rio by myself. You know, I think the 2-year-old, the 4-year-old, they were lovely. But anyhow, so we were thinking about how to do that, and there was this couple upstairs, and they said, oh, we have a friend in Rio. We have this friend, and we'll call him, and you can stay at his place, because he's super gregarious, he knows all these people, and he has a great apartment right on the beach. Is Frankie still here?
She just left.
Oh, damn. Okay, so anyway, I was going to have her add in a piece of the story because she knows all the details all the time. Anyway, she never forgets anything, but I can't remember what beach it was on, but it's a beautiful apartment, and you can stay at this place. And I'm like, oh, great, okay. So that is awesome. So I write down the name, the address, and everything, and I have it, you know, it's like 1975. All analog, okay? All right, so I go on the plane and we fly to Rio, and I'm kind of feeling like this is like a prop plane or something. I can't really remember for sure, but it's a small plane, and we like circle around, and we fly over Pau de Açúcar. It's like so beautiful. Everything's like, I'm in Rio, this is so great. So I get off the plane, and I get my suitcase, and my suitcase is really huge because I've been living there, okay? And I can barely drag it because suitcases don't have wheels in those days. So the taxi drops me off with my big suitcase and leaves. You know, and I was like, there's the building, okay. I'm looking at my little piece of paper. So I go up to the door and I knock, and my heart is pounding. I kind of hide the suitcase off to the side. And the door opens, and there is Norlandio. And he is like literally the most gorgeous man I've ever seen, you know? And I'm just like, you know, like, yeah, I gotta say something in Portuguese now. So I say, my name is Sue. You know, like, what else am I gonna say? I'm Sue. And he's like, oh, come in. Okay. I'm just like, I'm gonna get the suitcase. I'm doing my suitcase, and the place is amazing. There's the view of the ocean, and there's all these other people, and there's like music playing in the background, and everyone is really cool, and I'm meeting everyone, and then it's time to go out, and when we go out dancing. And Norlandia is like the best dancer and all of a sudden I'm like a good dancer too, amazing! And the music is so beautiful, and the drinks are so tasty, and everything is like so amazing. So one thing leads to another. We go back to his apartment, and so I spend the night with him. Of course I do, and it's amazing, of course, and everything's just like great, and we're barely talking because my Portuguese is pretty good, but not really. I mostly speak Spanish, but then he does know Spanish, so that's cool too, and everything. All right. So the next morning, the kitchen is like all white and everything like. It's like really modern, it feels really beautiful, and he has like a robe for me, he has a white robe too, and it's so gorgeous, and oh my god, I must look like hell. So anyway, I sit there and I'm having, the cafezinho, the like little coffee for breakfast, and we're sitting there having our coffee and like looking over at him, and all of a sudden he goes, "Can I ask you one question?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Of all the doors in Rio, what made you knock on my door?" What? What? And he's like, "Yeah, of all the doors in Rio, I'm like, "Oh my god, where's the piece of paper? Don't you know about a piece of paper? This is your address and your name. Don't you know about your friends in Sao Paulo who called you and told you I was coming?" He was like, "What? I don't know anything. I don't know anything." He was like, "I don't know, man. I opened the door to some American girls." So, yeah. Anyhow, I did recover from that shock, and then I had to, of course, tell him, "Well, I'm like leaving for New York tomorrow." He was like, "Oh, we have another night." Okay. And, all well that ends well, I guess. And I did spend the following year in Spain, and I went back and finished college, and he actually did come and visit me in Lincoln, Vermont. Like about 3 years later, and it was amazing because I lived way up in Lincoln. I was actually house sitting in South Lincoln, and it was then it would have been the winter of like 1978, 9 or something, and it was like terrifically cold and snow this deep. And Orlando came and stayed in Lincoln. It was hilarious. So I kind of, yes. Anyway, that's the entire story.
Pretty impressive, unprepared story. I think it was slightly prepared. I think you told yourself that story several times.
Almost only nice.
I don't believe we have anybody else coming up.
I think that's it. So thank you all for coming out. Lisa from Middlebury Underground and myself. So thank you. It's been so wonderful to work with her and Matt and Judd. We will try to be doing this again in the spring. Be on the lookout. We would love to hear your stories. It's so fun to walk down Main Street and actually recognize someone because of their story. This range of ages was fabulous. I think it's really important that we invite all different people. Everyone's included. So please, if you know of someone, please reach out and let's hear their story too. We have 4 events coming up in the next week. The flyer is right as you go out the door. Please take a look. There is, on Sunday, we have a women's writing workshop from noon to 2. It still has a few places in it. On Monday, we have ecstatic dancing with restorative yoga. And on Tuesday night, Courageous Stage, which is a group from Town Hall Theater who's doing a project on the climate crisis and pollination, is having a community gathering called If I Say Bee. And they're looking for community members to come out and to offer, to take a look at what their idea is and to offer their ideas to it so it pollinates. So if you can come out for that on Tuesday, there'll be refreshments, and it's from 5:30 till 7. So Bundle exists because you show up. If you show up on Main Street, we're going to get these rented, and we're all going to be a thriving community again. So thank you for coming